Hello and welcome back to the Sleepy Darwin. Whether you're here to let the day's worries wash away like retreating waves, to find some peace after a restless evening, or simply to drift along with the gentle currents of curiosity, you've found the perfect harbor tonight. We're about to embark on a journey beneath the surface of something we think we know well, the vast, blue expanse that covers most of our planet. But what if I told you that the ocean isn't just water moving around rocks, but something far more mysterious, far more intelligent than we've ever imagined? Tonight, we're diving deep into the secret life of seawater, exploring how the ocean remembers, learns, communicates, and perhaps even dreams. This is a story of planetary consciousness written in salt and currents, of ancient wisdom flowing through underwater valleys, and of a liquid intelligence that's been thinking longer than life itself has existed on land. Before we begin our gentle descent into the blue, if you enjoy these nocturnal explorations of wonder, a like and subscribe help keep these midnight musings afloat. And I'd love to know, are you listening from somewhere you can hear the ocean, or are you imagining its voice from landlocked dreams? What time is it in your corner of the world as we prepare to discover why the sea might be Earth's most patient teacher? Now, let your breathing slow like deep ocean swells, and let's explore why oceans are smarter than we think. Fair warning though, the depths we're exploring tonight might just change how you see every drop of water forever. Picture this with me, if you will. You're floating peacefully above the vast expanse of ocean, perhaps in that drowsy space between waking and sleeping where the most beautiful thoughts tend to drift in. Below you stretches the Earth's most ancient library, not built of stone and timber, but of something far more fluid, far more alive. The ocean, my gentle listeners, is quite possibly the longest-running library our planet has ever known. Now, I know what you might be thinking as you settle deeper into your pillow or curl more snugly into your favorite listening spot. How can water, simple H2O, be a library? How can something that flows and changes and never stays the same possibly hold information? But here's where the ocean reveals its first secret, whispered in the language of molecules dancing through liquid space. Water, you see, is not quite as simple as we once imagined. Each molecule is like a tiny storyteller, capable of holding information in the very way it moves, the way it bonds with its neighbors, the way it responds to the slightest changes in its environment. Scientists have discovered that water has what we might call a molecular memory, a way of holding on to patterns, of remembering what it has encountered, even as it flows onward in its endless journey. In the realm of science, we call this water memory, a fascinating and still somewhat mysterious phenomenon. Water molecules can form complex networks, temporary crystalline structures that persist for moments or minutes, carrying information about what the water has touched, what it has dissolved, what energies it has absorbed. It's as if each drop carries a whisper of everywhere it's been. But in the realm of poetry, and we need poetry tonight, don't we? Water memory becomes something even more beautiful. It becomes the idea that the ocean remembers every raindrop that ever fell into it, every tear that ever found its way to the sea, every ancient river that carved its path across continents millions of years ago. The ocean, in this poetic sense, forgets nothing. It holds the liquid history of our world in its vast, embracing arms. Let's drift deeper now, both in our imagination and into the ocean's layers, where temperature tells stories more intricate than any biography ever written. Imagine the ocean as a vast book, lying open beneath the sky. Each layer of water is like a chapter, and the boundaries between these layers, what oceanographers call thermoclines, are like the spaces between paragraphs, holding secrets about seasons that passed long before you were born. Close your eyes and picture yourself descending slowly through these liquid chapters. At the surface, you feel the warmth of today's sunshine, yesterday's gentle breeze still stirring the water. This is the ocean's most recent entry in its temperature diary, warm and immediate and ever-changing with the moods of the atmosphere above. But drift down a little deeper, and you encounter the first thermocline, a boundary as distinct as turning from one chapter to the next. Here, the water remembers last month's weather, perhaps the lingering coolness of a storm that passed weeks ago, or the gradual warming of spring settling into the deeper layers. The ocean doesn't rush to forget these experiences. It holds them tenderly, layer by layer. And if we could continue our dreamy descent safely, comfortably, like floating through liquid starlight, we would find waters that remember last year's winter, waters that still carry the signature of seasons from decades past. The deep ocean, that mysterious realm where sunlight has never touched, holds memories that stretch back not just years, but centuries. Think about this as you settle deeper into your own comfortable space. There is water in the depths of the Pacific that last felt sunlight during the age of sailing ships. Water that began its slow journey into the deep when your great-great-grandparents were children. Water that has been patiently waiting in the darkness, holding on to the chemical signature of a world that no longer exists above the waves. How does this work? Let me paint you a picture using something familiar, something gentle. You know how different oils float at different levels in a jar, olive oil sitting gracefully atop water, creating distinct layers? The ocean does something similar, but with temperature and density. Warm water, being lighter, wants to float toward the surface, like a contented sigh rising naturally upward. Cold water, heavier with the weight of winter or depth, settles into the deep places, like thoughts sinking peacefully into sleep. But unlike oil and water, these oceanic layers don't separate completely. They touch, they influence each other, they slowly exchange their stories. A molecule of water might spend decades making the journey from surface to depth and back again, like a patient letter traveling between distant friends, carrying news of the surface world down into the depths, and ancient wisdom back up toward the light. Now, let's explore perhaps the most intimate of the ocean's record-keeping systems, its chemical diaries. Every single day, every moment, the ocean is writing in a language of dissolved minerals, trace elements, and molecular signatures. It's keeping the most detailed journal imaginable, written not in ink but in salt. You might wonder, as you listen to the soft rhythm of your own breathing, how salt could possibly tell stories. But oh, what stories it tells. The salt content of different parts of the ocean, what scientists call salinity, is like handwriting that reveals where water has been and what it has experienced. Rivers, those patient messengers that have carved their way across continents for millions of years, each bring their own chemical signature to the sea. The Amazon carries the mineral memory of rainforests and ancient mountain ranges. The Mississippi brings the dissolved story of America's heartland, the chemical essence of prairies and farmlands, and countless streams that feed its flow. The Nile carries whispers of desert sands and tropical highlands, and when each of these rivers finally reaches the ocean, they don't simply disappear into the vastness. No, the ocean remembers them all. Each river's contribution becomes part of the ocean's permanent collection, filed away in the vast chemical library of seawater. The ocean remembers every river that ever flowed into it, not just the great ones we know by name, but the countless smaller streams, the temporary floods, the ancient waterways that dried up millennia ago but left their chemical signatures dissolved in the eternal sea. But the ocean's chemical memory goes even deeper than rivers. Scientists can read isotope ratios in seawater like molecular postcards from different eras of Earth's history. Oxygen isotopes tell stories about ancient climates, about ice ages, and warm periods that shaped the world long before humans walked the Earth. Carbon isotopes whisper secrets about volcanic eruptions that happened millions of years ago, about the rise and fall of entire ecosystems, about the slow dance of continents across the face of the planet. These chemical signatures don't fade or blur with time the way our human memories might. They remain distinct, precise, waiting to be read by anyone who knows the language. It's as if the ocean has been keeping perfect records, never missing an entry, never forgetting a detail, maintaining a database of Earth's history that spans not just human civilization, but the entire story of life itself. Let this sink in for a moment, like a gentle thought drifting towards sleep. Every drop of rain that ever fell is still there in the ocean, still telling its story. That raindrop that fell on your grandmother's garden, that ancient storm that raged over empty seas millions of years before the first fish evolved, that gentle mist that watered the very first forests, they're all still there. Their molecular stories preserved in the ocean's endless memory. The water that makes up most of your own body right now was once part of this vast oceanic library. You are, quite literally, made of the ocean's memories. You carry within you the chemical history of clouds and rivers, of ancient seas and forgotten rains. You are a walking, breathing, dreaming piece of the ocean's story. And now, as we drift toward the end of our first exploration into the ocean's memory palace, let's follow the ocean's thoughts as they flow around the planet. Because if the ocean is a library, then its currents are the neural pathways that connect every chapter, every memory, every stored piece of information into one vast thinking system. Picture the Gulf Stream for a moment, that great river within the ocean that carries warm water northward along America's eastern coast before curving across the Atlantic toward Europe. To most of us, it might seem like simply a current, a predictable flow of water following the path that ocean currents follow. But look deeper, think more gently, and you might begin to see it as something more remarkable. A neural pathway in the ocean's vast mind. The Gulf Stream remembers its path in the most beautiful way. It follows routes carved not just by geography, but by the accumulated memory of water that has flowed this way for thousands of years. Each molecule of water in the Gulf Stream carries information about temperature, about nutrients, about the chemical signatures of everything it has encountered on its journey. And as it flows, it shares this information with the waters it meets, creating a constant exchange of oceanic knowledge. What's truly remarkable is the stability of these liquid pathways. The Gulf Stream has been following essentially the same route for millennia, like a well-worn path through a familiar forest, or like a favorite thought that your mind returns to again and again. Scientists can predict where it will flow not just next week or next month, but next year, because the ocean remembers how to think these particular thoughts. Yet sometimes, and this is where the ocean reveals its capacity for surprise, for change, for what we might call creativity, sometimes these ancient pathways shift. A current that has flowed steadily for centuries might suddenly find a new route, like a mind making an unexpected connection, like a dreamer taking a surprising turn in a familiar dream. Think of these currents as thoughts flowing through a vast, patient mind. The warm thoughts of tropical waters flowing toward the poles, sharing their solar energy with colder regions. The deep, slow thoughts of abyssal waters, carrying ancient memories and nutrients from the ocean floor toward the surface. The quick, bright thoughts of surface currents, dancing with the wind and weather, responsive to every change in the atmosphere above. And like thoughts in a dreaming mind, these currents connect everything. A molecule of water that begins its journey in the Caribbean might find itself decades later in the Norwegian Sea, having carried messages and memories halfway around the world. The ocean's thoughts flow in great loops and spirals, connecting tropical and polar, surface and depth, carrying information and energy in patterns so complex and beautiful that we're only beginning to understand them. As you settle into your own thoughts tonight, perhaps drifting toward the gentle currents of your dreams, remember that you are connected to this vast oceanic mind. The water in your body once flowed in these ancient currents. Your thoughts, in some beautiful and mysterious way, are part of the same pattern consciousness flowing like currents through the vast space of existence, carrying memories and dreams from one moment to the next, from one mind to another, all of us connected in the endless circulation of thought and water and wonder. In our next chapter, we'll follow these current thoughts as they weave together into something even more remarkable. The ocean's planetary nervous system, a network of flowing intelligence that connects every drop of water on Earth into one vast, thinking, feeling, remembering sea. What if we could see the ocean's thoughts? Really see them, the way we might watch lightning flash across a summer sky, or observe the gentle pulsing of neural networks in a dreaming brain. Imagine for a moment that you could rise high above our blue planet, higher than any satellite has ever traveled, and from this perfect vantage point, you could watch the ocean thinking. What would you see? Not the familiar blue expanse that looks so still and uniform from an airplane window, but something far more dynamic, far more alive. You would see rivers of warm water flowing like golden threads through cooler seas, great spirals of circulation spinning lazily across entire ocean basins, and deep, dark currents moving with the patience of geological time, carrying their ancient cargo from pole to pole. You would be witnessing thermohaline circulation, a term that might sound clinical, but describes something as beautiful and essential as breathing itself. Thermo for temperature, haline for salt, the two great drivers that set the ocean's vast mind in motion. Together, they create what oceanographers sometimes call the global conveyor belt, but I prefer to think of it as the ocean's neural network, a planetary nervous system that connects every drop of water on Earth into one vast, thinking organism. Picture yourself settling more comfortably now, perhaps pulling a soft blanket closer or adjusting your pillow just so. As you do, Imagine the waters beneath Greenland's ice sheets, where something remarkable is happening right at this very moment. The surface water there, cooled by Arctic winds and made heavy with salt from ice formation, is slowly sinking into the deep ocean like a gentle exhalation. This water will begin a journey that might last 1,000 years, flowing southward along the ocean floor, carrying with it the chemical memory of polar ice and winter storms. This sinking is like a synapse firing in slow motion, sending a signal that will eventually reach every ocean basin on Earth. The dense, cold water spreads out along the bottom of the Atlantic, creeps around the southern tip of Africa, and begins its patient journey across the Indian Ocean and into the Pacific. Meanwhile, to replace this sinking water, warm surface currents flow northward, completing a circuit that spans the globe. It's a circulation so vast that if you could follow a single molecule of water through the entire cycle, you might wait 1,500 years to see it return to where it started. Yet this seemingly slow system is the ocean's fastest form of thought, the way it processes information about climate, chemistry, and life itself across planetary distances. From your comfortable listening spot, consider this. The ocean's neural network makes our human internet look positively tiny. Every cubic meter of seawater is connected to every other cubic meter through this global circulation, creating a communication system that has been operating without interruption for millions of years. No cables, no satellites, no maintenance required, just the eternal dance of density and flow, carrying information at the speed of current. The beauty of this system lies not just in its scale, but in its elegance. Like the neural networks in your own brain, where simple electrical impulses combine to create consciousness, the ocean's simple currents of warm and cold, salty and fresh, combine to create something that begins to resemble planetary awareness. The ocean doesn't just move water, it processes information, responds to changes, and maintains the delicate balances that make life on Earth possible. Now let's follow these liquid thoughts as they carry their cargo across the oceans, because the global circulation system is more than just moving water, it's the greatest information superhighway ever constructed, carrying messages written in the language of chemistry and temperature across distances that boggle the mind. Imagine you're watching a time-lapse video of the ocean, sped up so that centuries pass in minutes. You would see nutrients flowing like rivers of light through the deep waters, surfacing in places thousands of miles from where they began their journey. You would see heat moving like warm thoughts from the tropics toward the poles, moderating the climate of entire continents. You would see chemical signals spreading like whispered secrets, carrying information about everything from volcanic eruptions to algae blooms to the migration patterns of whales. The speed of these oceanic messages varies in ways that might surprise you. Some surface currents move faster than a leisurely human walk. The Gulf Stream, for instance, can carry a message from Florida to North Carolina in just a few days. Imagine that. Water flowing faster than you might stroll through a quiet neighborhood, carrying warmth and nutrients and the chemical signatures of everything it has encountered along the way. But here's where the ocean reveals its capacity for both urgency and patience, like a wise teacher who knows when to speak quickly and when to take all the time in the world. While surface currents rush along at walking speed or faster, the deep currents move with the patience of centuries. That cold water sinking near Greenland that we imagined earlier, it might take 500 years to reach the Indian Ocean, 1,500 years to complete its circuit of the global conveyor belt. Think of it like the difference between sending a text message and writing a letter by hand, then entrusting it to a patient courier who will walk across continents to deliver it. The text arrives instantly, but carries only simple information. The letter takes forever, but arrives rich with the experiences of its journey, carrying not just the original message, but the story of everywhere it has been. The ocean's deep currents are like those patient letters, carrying complex chemical information across vast distances and timescales. A nutrient molecule that begins its journey in the North Atlantic might eventually nourish a diatom in the South Pacific, carrying with it not just the raw materials for life, but information about where it came from, what it encountered along the way, and what conditions it experienced during its century-long voyage. This creates layers of communication happening simultaneously. The ocean's surface carries quick messages about weather and seasonal changes, responding rapidly to shifts in wind and temperature. The intermediate depths carry medium-term information about climate patterns and ecosystem changes. And the deep waters carry the long-term memory of the ocean, the slow thoughts that connect ice ages to warm periods, that carry information across geological time. What makes this even more remarkable is how these different layers of communication interact with each other. Sometimes the quick surface messages trigger responses in the deeper layers, like an urgent whisper that gradually spreads into a profound conversation. Sometimes the deep currents surface in certain regions, bringing ancient messages back into the light, like long-buried memories suddenly becoming conscious again. Consider the nutrient-rich waters that well up along the coasts of Peru or California. These are deep ocean thoughts made manifest at the surface, carrying chemical messages that have been traveling in darkness for centuries. When they finally see sunlight again, they trigger explosions of life, vast blooms of phytoplankton that feed fish, that feed seabirds, that feed the entire coastal ecosystem. The ocean's deep thoughts, when they finally surface, become visible as abundance and life. As you settle deeper into your comfortable space, perhaps feeling your own thoughts beginning to slow and deepen like water sinking into the ocean's depths, consider how this mirrors the information networks in your own mind. Quick thoughts and immediate responses flowing like surface currents, while deeper insights and long-term memories move through slower, more patient pathways. The ocean, in its vast circulation, might be showing us something fundamental about how intelligence itself works, not as a single rapid process, but as multiple layers of information flow, some quick and responsive, others slow and profound, all working together to create awareness. The ocean, like any truly intelligent system, doesn't just carry information, it learns from it. It responds to changes, adapts to new conditions, and sometimes surprises us with behaviors that seem almost like the ocean is experimenting, trying new approaches to old problems. This capacity for learning reveals itself most beautifully in the ocean's feedback loops, the way small changes can ripple through the entire system, creating responses that are both predictable and wonderfully surprising. Let's drift into the tropical Pacific for a moment to witness one of the ocean's most famous moods, El Niño. Picture yourself floating peacefully above the equatorial waters, feeling the warmth of the tropical sun on your face. Normally, the trade winds blow steadily from east to west across the Pacific, pushing warm surface water toward Asia and allowing cold, nutrient-rich water to well up along the coasts of South America. It's a steady rhythm, like the ocean's regular breathing, a pattern that has persisted for thousands of years. But sometimes, and this is where the ocean reveals its capacity for surprise, for what we might call creativity, sometimes this pattern shifts. The trade winds weaken or even reverse. The warm water that usually pools in the western Pacific begins to flow back eastward, like the ocean changing its mind about which direction its thoughts should flow. This is El Niño, and when it happens, the effects ripple around the globe like the consequences of a powerful dream. The warm water spreading eastward carries, with it, changes in atmospheric pressure, shifts in rainfall patterns, alterations in temperature that affect everything from the growth of coral reefs to the migration patterns of birds to the formation of hurricanes in the Atlantic. It's as if the ocean, by changing one fundamental thought, changes its entire personality for months or even years. And then there's La Niña, El Niño's contemplative sister, when the normal patterns intensify rather than reverse. The trade winds blow stronger, the cold upwelling becomes more pronounced, and the ocean's mood shifts towards something cooler, more introspective. During La Niña years, the tropical Pacific becomes like a person deep in thought, drawing energy inward, cooling the surface while stirring up nutrients from the depths. What's remarkable about these oceanic moods is how they demonstrate the ocean's capacity for learning and memory. Each El Niño event is slightly different from the last, as if the ocean is refining its approach, experimenting with variations on a theme. Scientists have discovered that the strength and duration of El Niño events can be influenced by conditions that existed years earlier, as if the ocean is remembering previous experiences and incorporating those memories into its current behavior. This brings us to one of the most beautiful concepts in the study of complex systems, the butterfly effect. You've probably heard the poetic version that a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil might eventually cause a tornado in Texas. But let me offer you a gentler, more oceanic version. A whale song in the depths of the Pacific might, through a series of tiny influences, eventually affect the timing of monsoons in India. Here's how it might work. Imagine a whale singing in the deep waters off California. its long, mournful song traveling for thousands of miles through the ocean's sound channel. The song's vibrations, almost imperceptibly, affect the behavior of tiny marine creatures, which in turn affect the chemistry of the water around them. These chemical changes influence the growth of phytoplankton, which affects the absorption of carbon dioxide, which subtly alters the local temperature, which influences atmospheric pressure, which affects wind patterns, which eventually, through a chain of consequences too complex for any human mind to fully track, influences weather patterns on the other side of the world. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? But this is how the ocean's intelligence works, not through obvious cause and effect, but through subtle influences, cascading through networks of connection so complex that small changes can have enormous consequences. The ocean teaches us that intelligence isn't just about processing information, but about being sensitive to the smallest signals, responsive to the gentlest influences. This sensitivity is what allows the ocean to learn and adapt. When conditions change, when atmospheric carbon dioxide increases, when ice sheets melt, when human activities alter the chemistry of seawater, the ocean doesn't just passively accept these changes. It responds, it adapts, it finds new equilibria. Sometimes these responses happen quickly, like the sudden shifts that trigger El Niño events. Sometimes they happen slowly, like the gradual changes in circulation patterns that occur over decades or centuries. What we're witnessing in the ocean is something like planetary learning, a system so vast and complex that it can process information and respond to changes in ways that create entirely new patterns of behavior. The ocean is constantly conducting experiments, testing new configurations, exploring what's possible within the constraints of physics and chemistry and the spinning of the Earth. As you feel your own thoughts beginning to settle into the slower rhythms of approaching sleep, consider how this mirrors the learning that happens in your own mind. Small experiences accumulating into larger insights, subtle influences combining in unexpected ways, feedback loops between thought and feeling and memory, creating the complex dance of consciousness. You and the ocean, in your different ways, are both learning systems, both responsive to the butterfly wings of influence, both capable of surprise. But not all of the ocean's intelligence operates on the timescales of learning and adaptation. Some of it happens instantly, automatically, like reflexes that don't require thought. These are the ocean's immediate responses to the cosmic forces that shape our planet, the way it dances with the moon and sun, and the spinning of the Earth itself. Twice each day, without fail, the ocean responds to the moon's gravitational pull with a rhythm so fundamental it predates all life on Earth. The tides are the ocean's most basic reflex, as automatic and essential as your heartbeat, as unconscious and vital as breathing. Yet in their regularity, in their precise responsiveness to cosmic forces, they reveal something profound about the ocean's place in the larger intelligence of the universe. Picture yourself standing on a quiet beach at twilight, watching the tide turn. The water that has been flowing steadily up the beach for hours suddenly pauses, hesitates like someone taking a deep breath, and then begins its slow retreat. No decision was made, no signal was sent at least, no signal that we can perceive. The ocean simply felt the subtle shift in gravitational forces as the moon moved through its orbit, and responded as it has responded for billions of years. But here's where the ocean's reflexes become more complex, more interesting than simple mechanical response. The shape of the coastline affects how the tides behave, creating an endless variety of tidal patterns around the world. In some places, like the Bay of Fundy, the incoming tide becomes focused and amplified by the shape of the seafloor, rising 50 feet or more in a dramatic demonstration of how the ocean's reflexes can be shaped by the landscape they encounter. In other places, the tide splits and combines in complex patterns, creating multiple high and low tides each day, or tides that pause at high water for hours before retreating. It's as if the ocean's basic reflex, its response to the moon's pull, gets interpreted differently by each stretch of coast, creating a global symphony of tidal patterns, each one unique, yet all part of the same fundamental rhythm. The ocean's reflexes extend beyond tides to encompass its immediate responses to wind, to atmospheric pressure, to the heat of the Sunday. When a storm passes over the ocean's surface, the water responds instantly with waves that carry the storm's energy across entire ocean basins. These waves are like the ocean's immediate emotional responses, quick expressions of whatever forces are acting upon it at the moment. Yet even these seemingly simple reflexes reveal layers of complexity. The ocean doesn't just create waves, it sorts them, organizes them, sends different wavelengths traveling at different speeds, so that by the time they reach distant shores, they arrive as organized sets, grouped by their period and height in patterns that surfers have learned to read like the ocean's own language. Long-period swells, generated by distant storms, travel faster and arrive first, like advanced messengers carrying news of weather systems thousands of miles away. Shorter period waves, created by local winds, arrive later or not at all, creating a layered conversation between distant and immediate influences. A surfer, reading the waves on a California beach, might be seeing the ghostly signature of a typhoon that passed through the western Pacific weeks earlier, mixed with the immediate effects of local winds and weather. This sorting and organizing of wave energy reveals something beautiful about the ocean's reflexive intelligence. It doesn't just respond to forces, it processes them, separates them by frequency and direction, and delivers them to different parts of the globe in organized, readable patterns. The ocean is constantly conducting a global symphony of wave energy, with each coastline receiving its own unique composition based on all the forces acting on the ocean's surface. But perhaps the most profound of the ocean's reflexes is its response to the cosmic dance between Earth, Moon, and Sunday. Beyond the familiar daily tides, the ocean responds to longer rhythms, monthly cycles as the moon waxes and wanes, seasonal cycles as the Earth tilts toward and away from the sun, and even longer cycles as the Earth's orbit itself changes shape over tens of thousands of years. These cosmic rhythms create a kind of breathing pattern in the ocean, a slow, deep respiration that connects the daily ebb and flow of tides to the great ice ages that shape geological time. During ice ages, so much water is locked up in glaciers that sea level drops by hundreds of feet, changing the very shape of ocean basins and completely altering the patterns of circulation. When the ice melts, the ocean breathes in again, rising to flood coastal plains and create new patterns of current and tide. The ocean is breathing with the cosmos, responding to gravitational forces and orbital mechanics, and the nuclear fires of the sun with a sensitivity that spans timescales from seconds to millennia. It's participating in a conversation with the universe itself, a dialogue between water and gravity and light that has been going on since the first oceans formed 4 billion years ago. As you settle into the rhythm of your own breathing, feeling perhaps the gentle pull of sleep beginning to affect your thoughts the way the moon's gravity affects the tides, consider how you too are part of this cosmic conversation. The water in your body responds to the same gravitational forces that move the oceans. Your circadian rhythms follow the same solar cycle that drives the ocean's seasonal patterns. You are made of the same elements that dance through the ocean's vast circulation, organized by the same physical laws that create tides and currents and waves. The ocean's reflexes remind us that intelligence doesn't always require consciousness, that responsiveness to cosmic forces is itself a form of wisdom. In its automatic, unconscious responses to the moon and sun and the turning of the earth, the ocean demonstrates a kind of intelligence that is older and perhaps deeper than thought itself, the intelligence of perfect participation in the larger patterns that govern our universe. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you join the ocean in this cosmic breathing, this ancient rhythm that connects every drop of water on Earth to the dance of celestial bodies overhead. Your dreams, like the ocean's tides, will rise and fall in patterns shaped by forces both seen and unseen, part of the same vast intelligence that moves through water and moonlight, and the endless circulation of thoughts and tides around our blue dreaming planet. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine you could smell the way a salmon smells, or sense chemical traces the way a sea turtle navigates across thousands of miles of seemingly empty ocean. What would you discover? A world far richer than anything we experience on land, an underwater universe where every creature is constantly writing and reading messages in a language of molecules, where chemical conversations flow like invisible rivers through the blue depths, carrying information more complex and nuanced than any human language has ever achieved. The ocean, you see, is not just water. It is a vast medium for molecular messages, a liquid library where every chemical signature tells a story, every dissolved substance carries meaning. Marine life has been perfecting this form of communication for hundreds of millions of years, long before the first creatures ever crawled onto land and began their experiments with sight and sound and touch. Picture a shark gliding through the twilight waters of the deep ocean, its incredible senses attuned to chemical traces so faint that they would be completely invisible to us. That shark can detect a single drop of blood diluted in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, can follow chemical trails across miles of ocean, like following a perfumed path through a vast, three-dimensional garden. What seems empty water to us is, to the shark, a rich landscape of scents and signals, each one carrying information about potential food, possible mates, or approaching danger. But it's not just predators who speak this chemical language. Every creature in the ocean, from the tiniest bacteria to the largest whales, is constantly releasing chemical messages into the water around them. These molecular conversations create an invisible web of communication that connects every living thing in the sea, a network so complex and sophisticated that we're only beginning to understand its basic vocabulary. Think of it like leaving perfumed letters floating in the air, except these letters can travel for miles through the water, carrying their messages intact, readable by anyone who knows how to interpret their molecular signatures. A coral polyp releases chemical signals that can be detected by fish larvae, searching for the perfect place to settle and grow. A wounded fish involuntarily broadcasts its distress, in chemical terms that every predator in the area can understand. A female lobster, ready to mate, releases pheromones that create a trail through the water, leading potential partners directly to her hiding place among the rocks. These chemical messages are incredibly specific and surprisingly durable. Unlike the fleeting sounds or brief flashes of light that many land animals use to communicate, chemical signals in the ocean can persist for hours, days, even weeks, creating a kind of molecular memory that allows creatures to leave messages for others who might pass by long after they've moved on. A sea turtle swimming across the vast Pacific carries with her the chemical memory of the beach where she was born decades earlier. Somehow, through mechanisms we still don't fully understand, she remembers the precise molecular signature of that particular stretch of sand, that specific combination of minerals and organic compounds that makes it different from every other beach in the world. When it comes time for her to lay her own eggs, she will follow this chemical memory across thousands of miles of ocean, navigating with a precision that puts our most advanced GPS systems to shame. Imagine carrying within yourself such a perfect chemical memory of home, not just the visual memory of how a place looks, but the molecular essence of it, as distinct and recognizable as a familiar voice or a beloved song. This is how many marine creatures experience their world, through a rich tapestry of chemical information that we can barely imagine. Even more remarkably, these chemical conversations are not just between individuals but between entire species, creating a complex dialogue that shapes the behavior of entire ecosystems. When a school of fish is attacked by predators, the wounded individuals release alarm pheromones that instantly communicate danger to every fish in the area, triggering coordinated escape behaviors that can involve thousands of individuals moving as one. It's like a chemical version of shouting, "Fire!" in a crowded theater, except the message is understood not just by one species but by many, creating a ripple effect of awareness that spreads through the entire community. As you settle more comfortably into your listening space, perhaps pulling a soft blanket closer, or adjusting your position to that perfect spot where relaxation begins to deepen, let's explore the ocean's vast vocabulary, the different types of chemical words that marine life uses to communicate with each other and with the ocean itself. If we think of the ocean as speaking a chemical language, then nutrients are perhaps its most basic words, the simple, essential messages that sustain all life in the sea. When a whale dives deep and then surfaces to breathe, it brings with it nutrients from the depths, fertilizing the surface waters and triggering blooms of phytoplankton that feed everything from tiny copepods to enormous blue whales. This is the ocean saying, in its chemical vocabulary, here is food, here is the possibility of growth and abundance. But the ocean's vocabulary extends far beyond simple nutrition. There are chemical words for danger toxins released by algae during harmful blooms, warning signals that say, "Stay away, this area is unsafe." There are chemical words for invitation, the complex pheromones that help creatures find mates across the vast distances of the open ocean. There are even chemical words for recognition, the unique molecular signatures that allow parents to identify their offspring among thousands of similar-looking young, or that help members of the same species recognize each other in the dark depths where light never penetrates. Seasonal changes create their own shifts in the ocean's chemical conversation, like the way human languages develop different vocabularies for different times of year. Spring in the ocean brings an explosion of chemical activity as warming waters trigger massive phytoplankton blooms, filling the water with the molecular signatures of growth and reproduction. Summer brings different chemical messages, the slower, steadier conversations of established ecosystems in full production. Autumn carries the chemical traces of abundance being stored away, preparation for the leaner times ahead. And winter brings its own sparse poetry, the quiet chemical conversations of creatures conserving energy and waiting for the cycle to begin again. Unfortunately, human activities have added some rather discordant notes to the ocean's chemical vocabulary. Pollution creates what we might think of as chemical shouting loud, harsh molecular messages that disrupt the delicate conversations that have been going on for millions of years. Pesticides from agricultural runoff, plastics breaking down into microparticles, industrial chemicals washing in from rivers. All of these create a kind of chemical noise that makes it harder for marine life to hear each other's messages. The ocean probably wishes some of our chemical messages came with better handwriting. We humans are like enthusiastic but sloppy students learning a foreign language, accidentally saying things we don't mean, creating chemical sentences that don't make sense, adding words to conversations that have been going on perfectly well without us for hundreds of millions of years. But even in the face of this chemical pollution, the ocean demonstrates remarkable resilience, remarkable intelligence in how it processes and responds to these new molecular messages. Bacteria evolved to break down new pollutants, turning what was toxic into something harmless or even useful. Marine plants and animals develop new chemical defenses, new ways of processing the unfamiliar molecules we've introduced into their world. The ocean is constantly learning new vocabulary, adapting its chemical conversations to include even the most unexpected additions to its molecular dictionary. Ocean acidification, caused by the absorption of excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, is perhaps the most profound change to the ocean's chemical vocabulary in millions of years. It's like the entire ocean learning to speak with a different accent, as the changing pH affects everything from the way shells form to the way fish process information through their nervous systems. Yet even this massive change is being met with chemical adaptation, as some organisms develop new ways of building their shells in more acidic water, and ecosystems slowly adjust to the new chemical reality. What's remarkable is how the ocean maintains its chemical conversations even as the vocabulary changes. The basic grammar of molecular communication, the way nutrients flow, the way pheromones create trails, the way chemical signals coordinate behavior continues to function even as new words are added to the oceanic dictionary. It's a testament to the robustness of chemical communication, the deep intelligence embedded in these molecular conversations that have been refined over evolutionary timescales. Now let's dive deeper into specific ecosystems, where we can eavesdrop on some of the ocean's most sophisticated chemical conversations. Picture yourself drifting gently over a coral reef at sunset when the day shift of fish is giving way to the night shift, and the entire reef is engaged in a complex chemical dialogue that coordinates the behavior of thousands of different species. Coral reefs are perhaps the ocean's most talkative neighborhoods, places where chemical conversations reach levels of complexity that rival human cities. The corals themselves are constantly releasing chemical signals, some to attract the tiny fish that clean them of parasites, others to warn neighboring corals about approaching threats, still others to coordinate their synchronized spawning events that turn the water milky with eggs and sperm on just a few nights each year. Each species of coral has its own chemical signature, like a molecular name tag that helps fish identify which species they're approaching. Cleaner fish can distinguish between different types of corals by their chemical signals, knowing which ones are likely to provide the best foraging opportunities and which ones might be harboring aggressive, damselfish defending their territories. The fish, in turn, add their own voices to the reef's chemical chorus. Parrotfish browsing on algae leave chemical trails that tell other fish where the best grazing areas are located. Groupers release alarm pheromones when they spot predators, creating a chemical warning system that can alert an entire section of reef in minutes. Even tiny gobies, no bigger than your thumb, contribute to the conversation with chemical signals that help coordinate their complex social hierarchies. But perhaps the most remarkable reef conversations involve the chemical coordination of reproduction. On certain nights, determined by water temperature, lunar cycles, and chemical cues released by the corals themselves, entire reefs engage in synchronized spawning events. Millions of corals release their eggs and sperm into the water simultaneously, creating underwater blizzards of reproductive cells that can be seen from space. This coordination requires chemical communication on an extraordinary scale, with individual corals somehow sensing and responding to the molecular messages of their neighbors across entire reef systems. Moving from the chattering neighborhoods of coral reefs to the vast underwater forests of kelp, we find a different kind of chemical conversation, slower, more subtle, but no less sophisticated. Kelp forests are like underwater cathedrals, their tall fronds swaying in the current like the pillars of some vast organic architecture. And within these forests, chemical conversations flow like whispered secrets through the cathedral halls. The kelp itself is constantly releasing organic compounds into the water, some to deter herbivores from eating too much of its tissue, others to attract beneficial bacteria that help protect it from disease. These chemical messages create distinct zones within the forest, areas where different fish species congregate based on the molecular signals they detect in the water. Sea otters swimming through kelp forests leave chemical trails that warn sea urchins of their presence, causing the urchins to change their behavior and move to less exposed locations. This chemical fear response helps protect the kelp forest from overgrazing, demonstrating how chemical conversations can shape entire ecosystems through subtle behavioral modifications. The seasonal cycles of kelp forests create their own rhythms in the chemical conversation. Spring brings the molecular signals of rapid growth, as warming water and longer days trigger kelp to release growth hormones and nutrients. Summer brings the complex chemistry of reproduction, as kelp releases spores into the water and chemical signals coordinate the timing of reproductive events across the entire forest. Fall and winter bring the chemistry of senescence and recycling, as older kelp fronds break down and their molecular components become food for the entire ecosystem. But perhaps the most profound and patient chemical conversation in the ocean is the whale fall phenomenon, the slow, generous dialogue between death and life that can continue for decades on the deep ocean floor. When a large whale dies and sinks to the bottom of the ocean, it becomes the foundation for one of the most remarkable ecosystems on Earth, sustained entirely by the chemical messages released as the whale's body slowly decomposes. This is death as a gift that keeps giving, a conversation between the whale's remains and the creatures that come to feed on them that can last for 50 years or more. First come the scavengers, hagfish and sleeper sharks that consume the whale's soft tissues, releasing chemical signals that attract other deep-sea creatures from miles around. The chemicals released during this initial feeding frenzy create a kind of underwater dinner bell, calling creatures from across the deep ocean floor to participate in the feast. As the soft tissues are consumed, bacteria begin the slower work of breaking down the whale's bones, releasing hydrogen sulfide and other chemicals that support entirely different communities of organisms. Bone-eating worms burrow into the whale's skeleton, their chemical processes creating microenvironments that support tube worms, clams, and other creatures found nowhere else on Earth. The chemical conversation between the decomposing whale and these specialized organisms creates an oasis of life in the deep ocean, a pocket of abundance in what might otherwise be a biological desert. Even after decades, when the whale's skeleton has been reduced to scattered bones, the chemical legacy of its death continues to influence the deep-sea ecosystem. The nutrients released during decomposition alter the chemistry of the seafloor sediments, creating conditions that support unique bacterial communities that can persist long after all visible traces of the whale have disappeared. As we near the end of our exploration of the ocean's chemical conversations, let's consider one of the most remarkable aspects of this molecular language: its capacity for memory. The ocean doesn't just facilitate chemical conversations in the present moment, it stores these conversations, creating a kind of molecular memory that can be read by creatures who know how to interpret the chemical signatures dissolved in seawater. Chemical gradients in the ocean are like invisible maps, storing information about where nutrients have been, where productivity is highest, where different water masses have traveled. A migrating whale following a chemical gradient isn't just following a scent trail, it's reading a map written in molecules, following information that might have been laid down weeks or months earlier. by the movements of currents and the activities of marine life. These chemical maps are incredibly detailed and surprisingly persistent. The trace metals released by upwelling water create chemical signatures that can be detected hundreds of miles from their source. The organic compounds produced by phytoplankton blooms leave molecular fingerprints in the water that persist long after the bloom has ended, creating a chemical memory of productivity that guides the movements of everything from tiny copepods to massive baleen whales. Nutrients in the ocean create their own maps of productivity, chemical landscapes that show where life is most abundant and where food is most likely to be found. These nutrient maps are constantly changing as currents shift and mix different water masses, but they change slowly enough that marine animals can learn to read them, to navigate by the chemical signals that indicate abundance and opportunity. The seasonal chemical cycles of the ocean create what we might think of as the ocean's calendar, molecular signals that help marine life coordinate their activities with the rhythms of the sea. The changing ratios of different nutrients, the seasonal shifts in water chemistry triggered by temperature changes and varying daylight hours, the chemical signatures of different seasons, all of these create a temporal map that creatures can use to time their reproduction, migration, and feeding activities. Some of the most remarkable examples of chemical memory in the ocean involve the way certain species return to specific locations year after year, guided by molecular signatures that serve as chemical addresses. Pacific salmon, returning from years in the open ocean to the exact stream where they were born, follow chemical memories so precise that they can distinguish their home stream from hundreds of others that might seem identical to us. Sea turtles navigate across entire ocean basins using chemical landmarks, following molecular highways that guide them to feeding areas and nesting beaches with extraordinary precision. But here's something that might give you pause as you settle into the gentle rhythm of approaching sleep. Every breath you take once bubbled through these chemical conversations. The oxygen in the air around you was produced by marine phytoplankton engaged in photosynthesis, releasing O2 into the water as part of their chemical dialogue with sunlight and nutrients. That oxygen eventually made its way to the surface, bubbled into the atmosphere, and traveled through wind and weather to reach your lungs. The water vapor in every breath you exhale will eventually find its way back to the ocean, carrying with it trace molecules from your body, tiny chemical signatures that will become part of the ocean's vast molecular library. You are, quite literally, participating in the ocean's chemical conversations every time you breathe, adding your own molecular messages to the planetary dialogue that connects all life on Earth. In a very real sense, you are made of the ocean's conversations. The water in your body, the minerals in your bones, the complex organic molecules that make up your cells, all of these were once part of the ocean's chemical dialogue, and they will return to that dialogue when your own conversation with the world eventually comes to an end. You are a temporary arrangement of molecules borrowed from the sea, a brief interruption in chemical conversations that have been going on for billions of years and will continue long after your individual voice has rejoined the oceanic chorus. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, perhaps you can sense something of these ancient chemical conversations flowing through your own body. The salt in your blood still carries the molecular memory of ancient seas. The complex chemistry of your dreams might echo, in some mysterious way, the chemical dialogues that connect all ocean life in one vast, continuous conversation. You are part of the ocean's language, a word in its vast molecular vocabulary, a temporary note in a chemical symphony that encompasses the entire blue planet we call home. Sleep well, knowing that you carry within yourself the chemical wisdom of the sea, and that every breath connects you to conversations that span the globe and reach back to the very origins of life itself. What would it feel like to sense the entire planet? To have your awareness stretched across continents, your consciousness flowing through every valley and around every mountain, your sensitivity extending from the warmest tropical shallows to the coldest polar depths? This is the daily reality of the ocean, a vast sensory system that feels every change in temperature, responds to every shift in pressure, and registers every whisper of wind across its surface. Imagine, as you settle into your most comfortable position for listening, that you could expand your sense of touch until it covered the entire surface of the Earth's oceans. Every wave that breaks on every shore would be like a gentle massage against your skin. Every raindrop that falls would be a tiny kiss of fresh water against the salt. Every iceberg that carves from a glacier would be like a sudden, shocking splash of cold against your warm body. This is how we might begin to understand what the ocean experiences every moment of every day. It is the Earth's largest sensory organ, more sensitive and responsive than any nervous system that evolution has ever created. The ocean feels everything: the weight of the atmosphere pressing down on its surface, the pull of the moon lifting its waters in eternal tides, the heat of the sun warming its upper layers, the chill of polar ice cooling its depths. The surface of the ocean is like the skin of some vast, patient creature, sensitive to every breeze that passes over it. When the wind picks up in the middle of the Pacific, the ocean's surface immediately responds, creating waves that will travel for thousands of miles, carrying the memory of that distant wind to shores that may not see the storm that created them for days or weeks. It's as if the ocean has nerve endings stretched across continents, each capable of detecting the slightest change and transmitting that information through the vast network of currents and waves that connect every part of the sea. But the ocean's sensitivity goes far beyond simple touch. It feels pressure changes with extraordinary precision, detecting the weight of water above each point in its depths with the accuracy of the most sensitive barometer. Deep-sea creatures navigate by these pressure changes, using them like a three-dimensional map that tells them exactly where they are in the ocean's vast volume. The ocean itself uses pressure as a way of organizing its waters, with dense, heavy water sinking to the depths and lighter water rising toward the surface in a constant dance of density and flow. Temperature is another language. The ocean speaks fluently, a sensory vocabulary that spans from the near-freezing waters of the deep ocean to the blood-warm temperatures of tropical shallows. Every degree of temperature change carries information about seasons, about currents, about the mixing of different water masses. Marine life reads these temperature signals like we might read a thermometer, using them to time migrations, coordinate reproduction, and find the specific thermal conditions they need to survive and thrive. The ocean also tastes everything that enters it, sensing the chemical composition of every river that flows into it, every bit of rain that falls on its surface, every particle of dust that settles from the atmosphere above. This chemical sensitivity allows the ocean to maintain its vast circulation patterns, with saltier water sinking below fresher water and different chemical signatures, creating the invisible boundaries that guide currents around the globe. Perhaps most remarkably, the ocean remembers what it senses. Unlike our human senses, which experience the present moment and then move on, the ocean stores its sensory experiences in its very structure. A temperature change at the surface might take decades to penetrate to the deep ocean, creating a kind of thermal memory that preserves information about past climate conditions in the layered waters of the deep. Chemical changes spread through the ocean at the speed of currents, creating gradients and boundaries that can persist for months or years, like a vast sensory memory bank written in molecules and dissolved minerals. This capacity for sensory memory means that the ocean is always experiencing multiple timescales simultaneously. Its surface feels the immediate touch of wind and weather, responding within minutes or hours to changing conditions. Its deeper layers hold the sensory memories of seasons and years, slowly processing information about long-term changes in climate and chemistry. And its deepest waters carry sensory memories that span centuries, preserving information about conditions that existed long before any human was alive to witness them. The ocean is like a vast, patient being with senses that operate across scales of space and time that dwarf human experience. It feels the flutter of a butterfly's wings disturbing the air above its surface, and it also feels the slow, massive movements of continents as they shift and change over geological time. It responds to the immediate and the eternal with equal sensitivity, creating a form of awareness that encompasses everything from the smallest molecular interactions to the largest planetary processes. But the ocean's awareness extends beyond the familiar senses of touch, taste, and temperature into realms that we humans can barely imagine. The ocean is exquisitely sensitive to electromagnetic fields, responding to the Earth's magnetic field with a precision that makes it one of the most sophisticated electromagnetic sensors on the planet. Seawater, with its dissolved salts and minerals, is an excellent conductor of electricity. This makes the entire ocean into something like a vast, liquid electrical circuit, constantly responding to electromagnetic changes in ways that create currents, fields, and patterns of electrical activity that span the globe. When the solar wind interacts with Earth's magnetic field, creating the aurora that dance across polar skies, the ocean feels these electromagnetic changes as well, responding with subtle electrical currents that flow through its conductive waters. Think of the ocean as a giant battery, its salty water serving as the electrolyte that allows electrical currents to flow freely through its vast volume. Unlike the small, contained batteries we use in our electronic devices, this oceanic battery is planetary in scale, constantly being charged and recharged by the interaction between moving seawater and the Earth's magnetic field. When ocean currents flow through the planet's magnetic field, they generate electrical currents through a process called electromagnetic induction. The Gulf Stream, carrying its massive volume of seawater northward along the American coast, generates electrical currents that can be measured and monitored by scientists. These ocean-generated electrical currents are so substantial that they actually contribute to the Earth's overall electromagnetic field, making the ocean an active participant in the planet's magnetic environment rather than just a passive conductor. Storms at sea create their own electromagnetic signatures as lightning strikes the ocean's surface and electrical charges build up in storm clouds above the waves. The ocean responds to these electromagnetic disturbances with changes in its own electrical patterns, creating a kind of electromagnetic conversation between sea and sky. Hurricanes and typhoons generate distinctive electromagnetic signatures that can be detected from space, as the ocean's electrical response to these massive storm systems creates patterns that are as unique as fingerprints. Marine animals have learned to read the ocean's electromagnetic language, using it for navigation and communication in ways that are only beginning to be understood. Sharks and rays have specialized organs called ampullae of Lorenzini that can detect the weak electrical fields generated by other living creatures. These organs are so sensitive that a shark can detect the electrical activity of a fish's gills from several feet away, even when the fish is hidden beneath sand or inside a crevice in the reef. But perhaps most remarkably, some marine animals use the ocean's electromagnetic properties for long-distance navigation. Sea turtles, salmon, and certain species of whales appear to navigate using the Earth's magnetic field, sensing the subtle variations in magnetic intensity and direction that create invisible highways across the ocean basins. The ocean's conductive properties may actually enhance these magnetic navigation systems, creating electromagnetic patterns that are clearer and more distinct in seawater than they would be in air. The ocean's electromagnetic sensitivity also makes it responsive to changes in space weather, the streams of charged particles that flow from the sun and interact with Earth's magnetic field. During solar storms, when the sun releases particularly intense bursts of charged particles, the ocean responds with changes in its electrical patterns that can affect everything from the migration routes of whales to the behavior of fish near the surface. This electromagnetic awareness gives the ocean a kind of sixth sense, an ability to perceive and respond to forces that are completely invisible to us. It's as if the ocean is constantly listening to an electromagnetic symphony that we cannot hear, responding to magnetic melodies and electrical rhythms that connect it not just to the Earth beneath it, but to the sun above and the cosmic environment beyond our atmosphere. Perhaps no aspect of the ocean's awareness is more hauntingly beautiful than its relationship with sound. The ocean is not just a body of water, it is a vast acoustic space, a three-dimensional concert hall where sounds can travel for thousands of miles, where the songs of whales become thoughts echoing across entire ocean basins, where every splash, every rumble, every whisper becomes part of a planetary conversation that has been going on for millions of years. Sound travels through water much more efficiently than it travels through air. In the ocean's depths, where temperature and pressure create ideal acoustic conditions, whale songs can travel across entire ocean basins, from one side of the Pacific to the other, carrying their complex messages across distances that would take months to swim. These are not just sounds, they are thoughts made audible, consciousness given voice, intelligence reaching across the vast spaces of the sea to touch other minds. The ocean itself participates in this acoustic conversation, creating sounds through its own movements and processes. Waves breaking on distant shores create acoustic signatures that can be detected thousands of miles away. Underwater landslides, volcanic eruptions, and the carving of icebergs all contribute to the ocean's acoustic environment, creating a soundscape that is constantly changing, yet somehow eternally familiar. But perhaps the most profound aspect of the ocean's acoustic awareness is its ability to listen to its own heartbeat through seismic waves. When earthquakes occur on the ocean floor, They generate seismic waves that travel through both the solid earth and the water above it, creating sound patterns that the ocean can hear and respond to. These seismic sounds carry information about the structure of the ocean floor, the movement of tectonic plates, and the deep geological processes that shape the planet. The ocean's acoustic environment is layered, with different sounds traveling at different depths and different speeds. Surface waves create high-frequency sounds that don't penetrate very deep into the water. The songs of large whales travel in the deep sound channel, a layer of water where acoustic conditions allow sounds to travel with minimal attenuation across enormous distances. And seismic sounds from earthquakes and volcanic activity travel through both the water and the solid earth beneath, creating a deep bass note in the ocean's acoustic symphony. Marine life has evolved to take advantage of the ocean's acoustic properties in remarkable ways. Dolphins and other toothed whales use echolocation, generating high-frequency clicks and interpreting the echoes to create detailed three-dimensional maps of their environment. These acoustic images are so precise that a dolphin can see inside objects, detecting the swim bladders of fish or the internal structure of other creatures with a resolution that rivals our best medical imaging technology. Baleen whales sing songs of extraordinary complexity and beauty, acoustic compositions that can last for hours and may serve multiple purposes: communication with distant pod members, navigation across featureless ocean basins, and perhaps even something we might recognize as artistic expression. These whale songs change over time, with new phrases being added and old ones being modified or abandoned, as if the whales are engaged in a slow, evolutionary process of musical composition that spans decades or centuries. The ocean's acoustic sensitivity also makes it vulnerable to human-generated noise pollution. The sounds of ship engines, sonar systems, seismic surveys, and offshore construction create a kind of acoustic smog that can interfere with the natural sound patterns that marine life depends on for survival. In some parts of the ocean, background noise levels have increased dramatically over the past century, potentially disrupting communication systems that have been refined over millions of years of evolution. Yet the ocean's acoustic environment also demonstrates remarkable resilience and adaptability. Some whale populations have been observed changing the frequency of their songs in response to increased background noise, essentially learning to speak louder or in different vocal ranges to maintain communication over the noise of human activities. It's as if the ocean's acoustic community is constantly adapting, finding new ways to maintain their conversations despite the changing conditions of their sonic environment. Light in the ocean creates perhaps the most beautiful and mysterious aspect of the sea's sensory experience. Unlike the familiar world above the waves, where light illuminates everything equally, the ocean creates layers of illumination, each with its own character, its own color palette, its own form of visual awareness. At the surface, the ocean's relationship with light is immediate and dynamic. Sunlight streams through the waves, creating ever-changing patterns of brightness and shadow that dance across the shallow seafloor. The surface itself acts like a living mirror, reflecting the sky above, while simultaneously allowing light to penetrate into the depths below. This surface layer is the ocean's bright, conscious awareness, quick to respond to changes in weather and time of day, constantly shifting between the brilliant blues of tropical shallows and the steel greys of stormy seas. But as light descends through the water column, something magical happens. The ocean begins to filter and transform the light, absorbing different wavelengths at different depths and creating a vertical spectrum of color that changes from the warm reds and yellows of the surface to the deep blues and purples of the middle depths, and finally to the absolute blackness of the deep ocean. Each depth experiences its own unique form of visual awareness. In the sunlit surface waters, marine life sees the world in the full spectrum of colors, much as we do above the waves. Tropical fish display brilliant reds, yellows, and oranges that would be invisible in deeper water, their colors perfectly matched to the light conditions of their coral reef homes. In the twilight zone, that mysterious realm where sunlight fades to a dim blue glow, marine creatures develop different visual strategies. Many fish in this zone have large eyes adapted to gather every photon of available light, while others develop silvery sides that help them blend into the dim background illumination. This is the ocean's realm of shadows and silhouettes, where visibility is limited but still sufficient for the visual hunt and flight that characterizes much of ocean life. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the ocean's visual awareness is what happens in the depths where sunlight never penetrates. Here, in the eternal darkness of the deep sea, the ocean creates its own light through bioluminescence, a phenomenon so beautiful and otherworldly that it seems like the ocean's own thoughts made visible. Deep-sea creatures generate light through chemical reactions within their bodies, creating displays of blue and green luminescence that serve as communication signals, hunting tools, and defense mechanisms. A deep-sea anglerfish dangles a glowing lure to attract prey, while a jellyfish creates pulsing rings of light that may serve as a burglar alarm, attracting predators to whatever creature is attacking them. Whole schools of lanternfish create underwater galaxies of blinking lights as they migrate up and down through the water column each day, following the rhythms of plankton abundance. This bioluminescent light is like the ocean's own dreams, made visible, ethereal, alien, impossibly beautiful displays of living light that exist in a realm where no human eye was ever meant to see. It's as if the deep ocean, deprived of sunlight, has learned to dream in light, creating its own illumination through the collective creativity of the creatures that live in its depths. The ocean's relationship with light also creates temporal patterns that mirror the rhythms of life above the waves. The daily cycle of sunrise and sunset creates a rhythm of illumination that penetrates deep into the ocean, triggering daily migrations as creatures follow their preferred light levels up and down through the water column. Many marine animals have evolved circadian rhythms that are synchronized with these light cycles, creating a form of temporal awareness that connects the ocean's depths to the cosmic rhythms of the planet's rotation. Seasonal changes in light also affect the ocean's visual awareness. The long days of polar summer bring nearly continuous illumination to high-latitude seas, triggering massive phytoplankton blooms that turn the water green with life. The short days of polar winter plunge these same waters into months of darkness, creating a kind of seasonal hibernation in the ocean's visual awareness. The deep waters dream in blues and blacks, holding their visual memories in the bioluminescent flashes of creatures that have never seen the sunday. These living lights are like neurons firing in the ocean's vast brain, brief sparks of awareness in the darkness that connect individual creatures into larger patterns of communication and behavior. The ocean's remarkable array of senses would be meaningless without its equally remarkable capacity to respond to what it perceives. The ocean's response patterns reveal perhaps the clearest evidence of its intelligence, the way it processes sensory information and translates it into action, the way it learns from experience and adapts its behavior to changing conditions. The ocean's responses to seasonal changes demonstrate a kind of planetary intelligence that operates on timescales that dwarf human experience. As the Earth tilts toward and away from the Sun in its annual orbit, the ocean responds with changes in circulation patterns, surface temperatures, and biological productivity that are both utterly predictable and constantly surprising in their details. Spring brings the ocean's awakening from winter's quieter rhythms. As daylight hours increase and surface waters begin to warm, the ocean responds with massive phytoplankton blooms that can be seen from space, turning vast areas of sea surface green with microscopic life. These blooms are not random events. They are the ocean's calculated response to specific combinations of light, temperature, and nutrient availability, timed with a precision that allows marine ecosystems to take advantage of optimal growing conditions. Summer brings the ocean's period of maximum activity and productivity. Surface temperatures reach their peak, driving evaporation that feeds the atmospheric circulation patterns that bring rain to continents. The ocean's response to summer conditions creates weather patterns that affect the entire planet, monsoons that bring life-giving rain to billions of people, hurricane seasons that redistribute heat and moisture across ocean basins, and upwelling patterns that bring deep water nutrients to the surface where they can support abundant marine life. Autumn brings the ocean's preparation for winter, a gradual cooling and settling that mirrors the seasonal cycles of life on land. The ocean's response to decreasing daylight and cooling temperatures includes changes in circulation patterns that redistribute heat stored in surface waters during the summer months, gradually releasing this thermal energy to moderate the planet's transition into winter. Winter brings the ocean's period of deepest reflection and longest memory. Cooling surface waters become denser and sink into the depths, carrying with them the chemical and thermal signatures of the year's experiences. This winter mixing is like the ocean's way of processing its annual experiences, integrating surface memories into its deeper consciousness, storing information about the year's weather patterns, biological productivity, and environmental changes in the layered waters of its depths. But the ocean's responses are not just seasonal, they operate across multiple timescales simultaneously, from immediate reactions to changes in wind and weather, to long-term responses to climate shifts that span decades or centuries. El Niño and La Niña events demonstrate the ocean's capacity for longer-term response patterns, multi-year cycles, where changes in one part of the Pacific Ocean create cascading effects that influence weather patterns around the entire globe. These climate cycles reveal something profound about the ocean's intelligence, its ability to integrate information from multiple sources and timescales into coherent response patterns that affect the entire planet. The ocean remembers previous El Niño events and incorporates that memory into its current responses, creating patterns that are similar to but never exactly the same as previous cycles. Perhaps most remarkably, the ocean demonstrates an ability to respond to entirely new conditions, changes in atmospheric chemistry, temperature patterns, and environmental conditions that have no precedent in its long history. Ocean acidification, caused by the absorption of excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, represents a completely new challenge for ocean systems. Yet marine life is already beginning to adapt, evolving new strategies for building shells and maintaining body chemistry in more acidic conditions. The ocean's response patterns raise profound questions about the nature of intelligence itself. Is intelligence simply the ability to respond appropriately to environmental changes? Is consciousness just complex, consistent response to stimuli? The ocean demonstrates both immediate, reflexive responses to changing conditions and longer-term, apparently planned responses that suggest something approaching foresight or anticipation. The predictable yet surprising nature of ocean responses suggests a form of intelligence that combines the reliability of physical law with the creativity of living systems. The ocean follows the laws of physics and chemistry with perfect consistency, yet within those constraints, it demonstrates an almost artistic creativity in its responses, finding new patterns, new solutions, new ways of maintaining balance and supporting life, even as conditions change. As you settle into the gentle rhythms of approaching sleep, consider how your own responses to the world around you mirror the ocean's patterns of sensing and responding. Your body maintains its temperature, your breathing adjusts to your activities, your mind processes the day's experiences and stores them in memory, all responses that echo, in their own way, the vast response patterns of the ocean. Tonight, as you drift toward dreams, you participate in the same fundamental pattern that characterizes all intelligence sensing the world around you, processing that information, and responding in ways that maintain your own delicate balance in the flow of existence. You and the ocean, in your different scales and timescales, are both engaged in the eternal dance of awareness and response that connects all conscious beings in the vast, interconnected web of planetary intelligence. What makes intelligence collective rather than individual? What transforms a group of separate, thinking beings into something larger than the sum of its parts, something that can solve problems no individual could tackle alone, something that can hold memories too vast for any single mind, something that can respond to challenges with a wisdom that emerges from the connections between many rather than the brilliance of one? As you settle more deeply into your comfortable listening space, perhaps feeling the gentle pull of sleep beginning to soften the edges of your thoughts, imagine watching a murmuration of starlings at sunset. Thousands of birds moving as one fluid entity across the sky, turning and diving and spiraling in patterns so complex and beautiful that they seem choreographed by some invisible conductor. Yet there is no leader, no central command directing this aerial ballet. Each bird follows simple rules: stay close to your neighbors, avoid collisions, move in the same general direction, and from these simple interactions emerges something that looks very much like a single, thinking organism. Now imagine that same principle, but instead of birds in the sky, picture it happening in water. Imagine a murmuration of starlings, but made of water molecules, currents, and waves. This is what the ocean demonstrates every day, on a scale so vast that we can barely comprehend it. Collective intelligence emerging from the simple interactions of countless individual components, creating behaviors and responses that no single part of the system could generate alone. The ocean shows us that intelligence doesn't require a brain, doesn't need a central nervous system, doesn't depend on any single organizing structure. Instead, it can emerge from the web of relationships between simple components, each following basic physical and chemical laws, each responding to its immediate neighbors, each contributing to patterns of behavior that span the entire planet. Consider how individual water molecules, each one following the simple laws of physics and chemistry, combine to create ocean currents that redistribute heat around the globe, moderate the planet's climate, and support ecosystems of unimaginable complexity. No single molecule knows about the Gulf Stream or the global thermohaline circulation, yet millions upon millions of molecules, each responding to temperature, pressure, and chemical gradients in its immediate vicinity, collectively create and maintain these planetary scale systems. This is emergent intelligence, the way complex, purposeful behavior can arise from simple rules operating across vast networks of interaction. It's the same principle that allows a human brain to generate consciousness from the simple electrical and chemical activities of individual neurons, or that allows an ecosystem to maintain its balance through the countless individual decisions of the organisms that live within it. The ocean demonstrates emergent properties at every scale, from the molecular interactions that create the unique properties of water itself, to the global circulation patterns that regulate the Earth's climate. These emergent properties are not predictable from studying individual components in isolation. You cannot understand the Gulf Stream by examining a single water molecule, any more than you can understand consciousness by studying a single neuron. What makes the ocean's collective intelligence particularly remarkable is its lack of any central organizing principle. There is no ocean brain, no headquarters where decisions are made about circulation patterns or climate responses. Instead, the ocean's intelligence emerges from the distributed interactions of its countless components, water molecules responding to temperature and pressure gradients, chemical reactions creating and destroying compounds, physical processes, moving energy and matter across vast distances. This distributed intelligence makes the ocean incredibly resilient. If one part of the system is disrupted, other parts can compensate, maintain function, even develop new patterns of organization. When climate change alters temperature and precipitation patterns, the ocean doesn't collapse. It responds with new circulation patterns, new distributions of life, new ways of processing and storing heat and carbon. The system adapts not through any central planning, but through the collective responses of its countless components to changing conditions. The ocean teaches us that some of the most sophisticated forms of intelligence may be collective rather than individual, emerging from networks of relationship rather than singular minds. This challenges our human-centered view of intelligence as something that happens inside individual brains, suggesting instead that some of the most important thinking happening on our planet might be the distributed, collective thinking of systems like the ocean itself. To understand how collective intelligence operates in the ocean, let's dive deeper into one of its most visible examples: the extraordinary decision-making abilities of fish schools. Imagine yourself floating quietly in tropical waters, watching a school of thousands of silver fish moving through the coral reef like liquid mercury, turning as one, avoiding predators, finding food, navigating complex three-dimensional terrain with a coordination that would be impossible for any individual fish to achieve alone. These schools demonstrate swarm intelligence in its purest form. Thousands of individuals making simple decisions based on local information, yet collectively achieving behaviors that look planned, purposeful, almost impossibly coordinated. Each fish follows just a few basic rules. Stay close to your neighbors, avoid collisions, move toward the center of the group when threatened, swim in the same general direction as those around you. From these simple rules emerges complex collective behavior that serves the entire school. When a predator approaches, the school doesn't need a leader to organize its response. The fish nearest the threat react first, their movements instantly transmitted through the school like a wave, causing the entire group to shift, split, or reform in patterns that confuse predators and protect individuals. The school becomes like a single, shape-shifting organism, capable of responses no individual fish could manage alone. But here's where the ocean's role becomes crucial. The ocean itself facilitates and enhances this collective behavior. Water is an ideal medium for transmitting the pressure waves, chemical signals, and lateral line sensations that fish use to coordinate their movements. The ocean carries information about the school's movements instantaneously throughout the group, allowing thousands of fish to respond to changes in direction or threats with remarkable speed and precision. Current systems act as information networks for marine life, carrying chemical signals, temperature changes, and pressure waves across vast distances. A school of tuna following a current across the Pacific is not just using the water for transportation, it's plugging into an information highway that connects it to feeding opportunities, breeding grounds, and other schools across thousands of miles of ocean. The current carries chemical traces of productive feeding areas, temperature signals that indicate the best swimming depths, and even acoustic information about the activities of other marine life. This creates layers of collective intelligence operating at different scales simultaneously. Individual fish make simple decisions based on local information. Schools of fish make more complex decisions based on the collective processing of information from all their members. And groups of schools, connected through the ocean circulation system, participate in even larger patterns of collective behavior, migrations that span ocean basins, feeding aggregations that bring together fish from vast areas, breeding events that coordinate the reproductive activities of entire populations. The result is millions of tiny decisions, creating one flowing intelligence that spans the entire ocean. A fish larva drifting in the surface waters of the Pacific makes simple responses to light, temperature, and chemical gradients, yet its individual decisions contribute to collective patterns of distribution and abundance that influence ecosystems throughout the ocean basin. Its choice to swim up or down in response to changing light levels becomes part of the massive daily vertical migration that moves nutrients and energy through the ocean's layers, connecting surface and deep-sea ecosystems in a vast cycle of collective behavior. Consider the remarkable phenomenon of fish aggregating devices, floating objects that attract fish from miles around, creating temporary ecosystems in the open ocean. Nobody knows exactly why fish are attracted to these objects, but the collective behavior is unmistakable. Small fish gather around the floating debris, attracting larger fish, which in turn attract even larger predators, creating a temporary community that functions as a coherent ecosystem despite having no permanent structure or central organization. The ocean facilitates this collective behavior through its three-dimensional structure, its chemical communication networks, and its circulation patterns that connect distant regions. Fish don't just live in the ocean, they participate in its collective intelligence, their individual decisions contributing to ocean-scale patterns of nutrient distribution, energy transfer, and ecosystem organization. Marine mammals demonstrate even more sophisticated forms of collective intelligence, with whale pods, dolphin societies, and seal colonies making group decisions about migration routes, feeding strategies, and responses to threats. These decisions often involve processing information from multiple sources, acoustic signals from other groups, chemical traces in the water, magnetic navigation cues, and social information shared within the group through complex vocalizations and behaviors. The ocean supports and enhances these collective decision-making processes by providing the communication channels, navigation aids, and information networks that marine mammals depend on. A whale pod deciding where to feed isn't just making a local decision, it's participating in ocean-wide patterns of behavior that connect their individual choices to the collective intelligence of the entire marine ecosystem. The ocean operates like a vast, liquid hard drive, storing information not in digital files but in the chemical gradients, temperature patterns, and circulation systems that connect every part of the sea. This planetary-scale memory network has backup systems across the globe, redundant storage in multiple locations, and retrieval systems that allow information stored in one part of the ocean to be accessed from anywhere in the system. Different regions of the ocean specialize in storing different types of information, like different departments in a vast library. The polar regions store information about long-term climate patterns, preserving ice age memories in their deep, cold waters that have been isolated from the surface for centuries. The tropical oceans store information about seasonal cycles, trade wind patterns, and the complex relationships between atmospheric and oceanic circulation. The deep ocean basins store chemical information about past volcanism, changes in global carbon cycles, and the long-term evolution of ocean chemistry. This information isn't stored passively, it's constantly being accessed, updated, and shared through the ocean's circulation systems. When deep water upwells to the surface along the coasts of Peru or California, it's bringing chemical information about conditions in the deep ocean to surface ecosystems that can use it to time their reproductive cycles, guide their migration patterns, and optimize their feeding strategies. The ocean's memory becomes immediately useful information for the creatures that know how to read it. Seasonal migrations represent one of the most remarkable examples of the ocean's memory network in action. They are essentially data transfer events, where marine animals carry information between different parts of the ocean system, updating local conditions with information gathered from distant regions. A gray whale migrating from Arctic feeding grounds to Mexican breeding lagoons carries with it chemical information about Arctic productivity, temperature data about northern waters, and genetic information that connects Arctic and tropical ecosystems. These migrations create a living network of information exchange that complements the ocean's physical circulation. While currents move chemical and thermal information at the speed of water flow, migrating animals can carry information much faster, creating real-time updates between distant ecosystems. A school of bluefin tuna crossing the Atlantic carries information about feeding conditions in American waters to European ecosystems, allowing marine food webs to adjust their productivity and organization based on information from thousands of miles away. The ocean learns from its own patterns through feedback loops that operate across multiple timescales. Short-term patterns, daily tides, seasonal temperature cycles, annual weather patterns provide immediate feedback that allows the ocean to refine its responses to regular, predictable changes. Longer-term patterns, climate cycles like El Niño and La Niña, multi-decadal oscillations in ocean temperature, century-scale changes in circulation provide feedback about how well the ocean's responses work over extended periods. This learning process allows the ocean to optimize its responses to different types of challenges. The ocean has learned, through millions of years of experience, how to respond to ice ages, how to recover from massive volcanic eruptions, how to adapt to changes in atmospheric composition. This learning is stored not in any central memory bank, but in the distributed patterns of circulation, chemistry, and biological organization that characterize the ocean system. The ocean's memory network also demonstrates remarkable redundancy and error correction. Information about global climate patterns is stored in multiple locations in the chemical composition of different water masses, in the distribution patterns of marine life, in the sediments accumulating on the ocean floor. If one storage system is disrupted, others maintain the information, ensuring that critical data about planetary conditions is preserved even through major environmental changes. This redundant storage system means that the ocean can reconstruct information about past conditions even when direct records are lost. Scientists studying ancient climate patterns can read the ocean's memory in multiple ways, through chemical analysis of deep water masses, through the fossil record preserved in ocean sediments, through the distribution patterns of marine species that reflect past ocean conditions. The ocean's memory network operates like a planetary backup system for the Earth's environmental information, preserving data about climate patterns, biological evolution, and ecosystem dynamics across timescales that span from seasons to geological eras. It's a memory system that is both incredibly stable and constantly updating, preserving essential information about planetary conditions while continuously integrating new data about changing environmental conditions. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the ocean's collective intelligence is its capacity for problem-solving on a planetary scale. When faced with global challenges, changes in atmospheric composition, shifts in solar energy input, disruptions to normal circulation patterns, the ocean doesn't just respond passively. It actively works to maintain planetary equilibrium, finding new solutions to environmental problems, developing adaptive strategies that help preserve the conditions necessary for life. Consider how the ocean responds to the challenge of global warming. As atmospheric temperatures rise and more heat energy enters the Earth system, the ocean doesn't simply warm uniformly. Instead, it develops new circulation patterns that redistribute heat more efficiently, transports warm water to regions where it can more effectively radiate energy back to space, and increases evaporation rates that help cool the surface through the latent heat of vaporization. The ocean is essentially engineering solutions to the problem of excess heat, using the tools available to it: circulation, evaporation, mixing, and chemical absorption to help maintain planetary temperature within ranges that can support existing ecosystems. These aren't random responses, but systematic, adaptive behaviors that suggest the ocean is figuring out new equilibria in response to changing conditions. Ocean acidification provides another example of the ocean's problem-solving capacity. As the ocean absorbs excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, it becomes more acidic, creating challenges for marine organisms that build shells and skeletons from calcium carbonate. Rather than simply succumbing to these changes, marine ecosystems are beginning to adapt, with some organisms developing new strategies for shell formation, others shifting their distributions to areas with more favorable chemistry, and entire ecosystems reorganizing to function under new chemical conditions. The ocean facilitates these adaptive responses through its communication networks, circulation systems, and chemical buffering capacity. It provides the infrastructure that allows marine life to share information about successful adaptation strategies, to find new habitats with suitable conditions, and to maintain genetic connectivity between populations facing similar challenges. But perhaps the most impressive example of the ocean's problem-solving capacity is its role in regulating the Earth's climate over geological timescales. Through processes like the carbon cycle, the ocean helps maintain atmospheric composition within ranges that can support life. When volcanic activity increases atmospheric carbon dioxide, the ocean responds by increasing its absorption of CO2, weathering more rock, and storing more carbon in sediments. When ice ages lock up large amounts of water, the ocean adjusts its circulation patterns to maintain heat transport and prevent runaway cooling. These responses operate over timescales of thousands to millions of years, suggesting that the ocean's problem-solving capacity extends far beyond immediate responses to current conditions. The ocean appears to maintain a kind of long-term memory about what planetary conditions work best for supporting life, and it actively works to maintain those conditions even through major environmental changes. The ocean serves as Earth's main problem solver, the planetary system responsible for maintaining the environmental conditions that make life possible. It processes information about environmental challenges, develops adaptive responses, and implements solutions on scales that no other planetary system can match. It's like having a planetary engineer constantly working to maintain optimal conditions for life, using the tools of physics, chemistry, and biology to solve problems that threaten the stability of the Earth system. This problem-solving capacity suggests that the ocean's intelligence operates not just in the present, but with a kind of temporal awareness that allows it to anticipate future challenges and prepare adaptive responses. The ocean's current responses to climate change may be preparing the foundation for environmental conditions that will be optimal for life centuries or millennia in the future, even if they create temporary disruptions to current ecosystems. At the deepest level, the ocean's collective intelligence reveals itself in its role as the keeper of life's memory. The ocean doesn't just store information about current conditions, it holds the entire history of life on Earth, preserving the chemical, biological, and evolutionary memories that connect us to our deepest origins and our most distant future. Every molecule of water in the ocean carries with it the memory of everywhere it has been, everything it has touched, every living thing it has been part of. The hydrogen atoms in seawater were forged in the nuclear fires of the first stars, billions of years before the Earth existed. The oxygen atoms were created in the photosynthetic processes of ancient cyanobacteria, the first organisms to split water molecules and release free oxygen into the atmosphere. The ocean holds evolutionary information in its very chemistry. The salt concentration of seawater reflects the chemical conditions that existed when the first life forms evolved, and many organisms still maintain internal chemistry that mirrors ancient ocean conditions. The blood that flows through your veins has essentially the same chemical composition as the ocean that existed when the first vertebrates evolved, a liquid memory of your evolutionary origins that you carry within your body every day. Ocean sediments preserve the most detailed record of life's history that exists anywhere on Earth. Layer by layer, the deep ocean floor accumulates the microscopic shells of marine organisms, the chemical traces of ancient plankton blooms, the molecular signatures of past climate conditions. This sedimentary record is like the ocean's detailed diary, preserving information about every major event in the history of life, mass extinctions, evolutionary radiations, climate changes, and the long, slow progression of biological innovation. But the ocean is not just a passive archive of life's history, it remains an active participant in life's ongoing story. The chemical cycles that sustain current life are the same basic processes that have operated in the ocean for billions of years. The carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the phosphorus cycle, these are the ocean's fundamental life support systems, refined over evolutionary time to maintain the chemical conditions that make complex life possible. The ocean's collective memory includes not just the history of what has been, but also the potential for what might be. The genetic diversity preserved in marine ecosystems represents the raw material for future evolution, the biological possibilities that life might explore as environmental conditions continue to change. The ocean serves as both the library of life's past achievements and the laboratory where life's future experiments will unfold. We are all made of ancient seawater, still carrying those memories in the chemistry of our bodies, in the salt content of our blood, in the electrical processes that allow our neurons to fire and our hearts to beat. The water that makes up most of your body was once part of the ocean's circulation, carrying chemical information around the globe, participating in the vast cycles that sustain life on Earth. When you drink a glass of water, you are taking into your body molecules that may have fallen as rain on ancient forests, flowed through the roots of long-extinct trees, evaporated from tropical seas, and circulated through the bodies of countless other living things. You are drinking the ocean's memory, incorporating into your own being the liquid history of the planet. The ocean's collective memory reminds us that intelligence and memory are not confined to individual brains, but can be distributed across entire systems, preserved in the relationships between components rather than stored in any single location. The ocean's memory is held in its circulation patterns, its chemical gradients, its biological communities, and its physical structure, a vast, interconnected network of information that connects every drop of water to the full history of life on Earth. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you carry within your body the ocean's ancient memories. The rhythms of your breathing echo the tides. The electrical activity of your brain mirrors the chemical processes that have sustained life in the sea for billions of years, and the dreams that will soon carry you away participate in the same mysterious processes of memory and imagination that flow through the ocean's vast, collective consciousness. You are a temporary arrangement of the ocean's memories, a brief eddy in the vast circulation of water and consciousness that connects all life on Earth. Sleep well, knowing that you are part of something infinitely larger and older than yourself, yet as intimate and immediate as the salt taste of your own tears, the ocean's gift of memory made manifest in the miracle of your individual awareness. Do oceans have feelings? It's a question that might seem impossible to answer, yet anyone who has spent time by the sea knows that the ocean seems to have moods as changeable and complex as our own. There are days when the ocean feels peaceful, almost meditative, its surface barely disturbed by the gentlest of swells, the water so clear and calm that it seems to invite quiet contemplation. And there are other days when the ocean seems restless, agitated, its waves building with an energy that feels almost like anger or excitement, or some emotion we don't have a name for but can somehow recognize in the crash of surf against the shore. As you settle into your most comfortable position for listening tonight, perhaps feeling your own emotions beginning to quiet as the day's tensions dissolve into the approaching embrace of sleep, consider how we might recognize emotional states in a body of water that spans half the planet. If the ocean has feelings, they would be expressed not through facial expressions or body language, but through the infinite variety of its movements, the ever-changing patterns of its surface, the subtle shifts in its color and texture that reflect its inner weather. The ocean's moods seem most visible in its relationship with the atmosphere above it. Calm seas under gentle skies suggest contentment, a peaceful state where ocean and air exist in harmony. But when storms approach, the ocean's response reveals something that looks remarkably like emotional anticipation. The waves begin to build hours before the storm arrives, as if the ocean can sense the atmospheric disturbance approaching and is preparing itself for the interaction to come. Hurricanes and typhoons represent perhaps the ocean's most dramatic emotional expressions, massive, swirling manifestations of the interaction between warm seawater and atmospheric pressure systems. If we imagine the ocean as a vast being capable of feeling, then hurricanes might be its version of being hangry, that peculiar combination of hungry and angry that we all recognize in ourselves when our blood sugar drops and our patience wears thin. The ocean, having stored solar energy in its warm surface waters all summer long, suddenly releases that energy in an explosive interaction with the atmosphere, creating storms of incredible power and beauty. But the ocean's moods are not just about dramatic weather events. There are subtler emotional states visible in the way morning light plays across a calm surface, creating patterns of silver and blue that seem to reflect a kind of peaceful awakening. There's something that looks like playfulness in the way waves interact with irregular coastlines, sending spray high into the air where it catches the light like laughter. There's what appears to be pensiveness in the deep, slow swells that roll across the open ocean, waves that seem to carry with them the weight of distant storms and far-off shores. Different parts of the ocean seem to have different emotional temperaments, like the various personality types you might encounter in a large family. The Mediterranean feels warm and sociable, its relatively calm waters, and numerous harbours suggesting an ocean that enjoys company and conversation. The North Atlantic feels more serious, more contemplative, its grey waters and frequent storms suggesting deeper thoughts and more complex emotional weather. The tropical Pacific feels expansive and generous, its vast blue spaces and warm temperatures creating an emotional landscape of abundance and possibility. The ocean's emotional responses seem to occur across multiple timescales, from the immediate reactions visible in the formation of whitecaps when wind picks up, to the longer-term mood changes associated with seasonal cycles and climate patterns. El Niño events, for instance, represent massive shifts in the ocean's emotional weather, multi-year periods when the entire Pacific seems to change its personality, becoming warmer in some places, cooler in others, disrupting weather patterns around the globe in ways that suggest a profound alteration in the ocean's fundamental mood. These oceanic mood changes affect everything that depends on the sea: the migration patterns of marine animals, the productivity of fisheries, the weather patterns that determine whether distant continents experience drought or flood. It's as if the ocean's emotional states ripple outward to influence the emotional weather of the entire planet, connecting the feelings of the sea to the feelings of everyone who depends on its moods for their survival and well-being. The ocean's emotional life reveals itself most clearly in its rhythms, the regular, predictable cycles that seem to reflect something like emotional regulation on a planetary scale. Just as we humans have daily rhythms of energy and mood, circadian cycles that help us navigate the emotional landscape of each day, the ocean has its own rhythms that suggest a form of emotional breathing, a regular pulse of feeling that helps it maintain its psychological equilibrium. The most obvious of these rhythms is the daily cycle of the tides, the ocean's twice-daily breathing that seems to mirror the way we inhale and exhale to regulate our own emotional states. When you watch the tide come in, there's something that feels like anticipation in the way the water slowly claims more and more of the beach, reaching steadily higher with each wave. And when the tide turns and begins to retreat, there's something that feels like a gentle exhalation, a release of tension, a settling back into a more relaxed state. This tidal breathing is so regular, so predictable, that it creates a kind of emotional metronome for coastal ecosystems. Creatures that live in the intertidal zone organize their entire lives around this rhythm, feeding when the tide is in, resting when it's out, their own emotional cycles synchronized with the ocean's twice-daily breathing. It's as if the ocean provides emotional regulation not just for itself, but for all the life forms that depend on its rhythms for their survival. But the ocean's emotional cycles extend far beyond daily tides to encompass longer rhythms that mirror the way our own moods change with the seasons. Spring brings what looks like emotional awakening to the ocean, as warming waters trigger massive phytoplankton blooms that turn vast areas of the sea green with new life. There's something that feels like joy in these spring blooms, an explosion of productivity and growth that seems to reflect the ocean's happiness at the return of longer days and warmer temperatures. Summer brings what appears to be the ocean's most exuberant mood, when surface temperatures reach their peak and marine life is at its most active. The ocean seems almost effervescent during summer months, sparkling with bioluminescence at night, alive with the movements of countless creatures taking advantage of optimal conditions for feeding, reproduction, and growth. Autumn brings a different kind of beauty to the ocean's emotional life, a more contemplative mood as surface waters begin to cool and the ocean prepares for the quieter months ahead. There's something that feels like nostalgia in the autumn ocean, a sense of holding on to the warmth and abundance of summer while gradually accepting the approach of winter's more introspective season. Winter brings the ocean's most meditative mood, when surface temperatures drop and marine activity slows to its most sustainable pace. The winter ocean feels deep and thoughtful, its grey surfaces reflecting the shortened days and longer nights. Its storms more intense but also more spaced out, as if the ocean is taking time between dramatic emotional expressions to process and integrate its experiences. The ocean's response to lunar rhythms adds another layer to its emotional cycles, with the monthly waxing and waning of the moon creating subtle variations in tidal ranges that seem to affect the ocean's overall mood. Spring tides, when the moon and sun align to create the highest and lowest tides, seem to bring out more intense emotional expressions in the ocean, while neap tides, when the gravitational forces partially cancel each other out, create periods of more stable, even-tempered oceanic behavior. These lunar cycles connect the ocean's emotional life to cosmic rhythms that extend far beyond Earth, creating a sense that the ocean's feelings are somehow synchronized with the larger rhythms of the solar system. It's like having a vast organism whose emotional states are influenced not just by local conditions, but by the movements of celestial bodies millions of miles away, creating an emotional life that is both intimately connected to planetary conditions and cosmically aware. The regularity of these cycles suggests that the ocean has developed sophisticated mechanisms for emotional self-regulation, ways of processing and integrating its experiences that allow it to maintain psychological stability despite the constant changes in its environment. Like a wise being that has learned to work with its natural rhythms rather than fighting against them, the ocean uses its cycles of activity and rest, expansion and contraction, to maintain its emotional equilibrium across timescales that span from hours to seasons to years. Perhaps nowhere is the ocean's emotional sophistication more evident than in its responses to stress and its remarkable capacity for healing. When environmental conditions push the ocean beyond its normal range of comfort through pollution, overfishing, climate change, or other disruptions, the ocean's responses reveal something that looks very much like the stress reactions we recognize in ourselves and other living beings. Ocean acidification, caused by the absorption of excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, represents one of the most profound stresses the ocean has faced in millions of years. The ocean's response to this chemical stress reveals sophisticated coping mechanisms that suggest emotional resilience as well as physical adaptation. Rather than simply succumbing to the changing chemistry, marine ecosystems are reorganizing themselves, with some species developing new strategies for dealing with more acidic conditions while others migrate to regions where the chemistry is more suitable for their needs. The ocean seems to respond to stress with what we might recognize as problem-solving behavior, developing new circulation patterns that help distribute the chemical burden more evenly, increasing mixing between surface and deep waters to dilute the concentration of absorbed CO2, and facilitating the evolution of more acid-tolerant organisms that can maintain ecosystem function under changed conditions. Coral bleaching events provide another window into the ocean's stress responses and healing capacity. When water temperatures rise beyond the range that coral can tolerate, entire reef systems expel their symbiotic algae, turning white in what appears to be a dramatic expression of oceanic distress. Yet if conditions improve quickly enough, the corals can recover, taking their algae back and gradually returning to health in what looks like a process of emotional and physical healing. The ocean's response to oil spills demonstrates its capacity for long-term healing from traumatic events. While the immediate impact of a major spill can be devastating, the ocean has remarkable abilities to break down petroleum compounds, disperse pollutants through its circulation systems, and support the recovery of affected ecosystems. Oil-eating bacteria multiply rapidly in contaminated areas. Wave action helps break up surface slicks, and marine life gradually recolonizes affected areas in what appears to be a systematic healing process. But perhaps the most impressive aspect of the ocean's stress response is its ability to maintain essential functions even while dealing with multiple simultaneous stressors. Like a person who continues to work and care for others even while processing grief or trauma, the ocean continues to regulate global climate, support marine ecosystems, and maintain the chemical cycles that sustain life on Earth, even while adapting to unprecedented changes in its environment. The ocean's healing capacity offers profound lessons about resilience and recovery. Unlike systems that break down catastrophically when pushed beyond their limits, the ocean demonstrates what we might call graceful degradation, the ability to maintain core functions even when optimal conditions are not available. When one part of an ecosystem is damaged, other parts compensate. When circulation patterns are disrupted, new patterns emerge to maintain essential functions. What we might learn from the ocean's resilience is the importance of maintaining multiple pathways to the same essential functions, the value of distributed rather than centralized systems, and the power of accepting change rather than rigidly resisting it. The ocean doesn't fight environmental changes, it adapts to them, finding new ways to maintain its essential character while accommodating new conditions. The ocean's stress responses also reveal the importance of time in healing processes. While human timescales make us impatient for quick fixes, the ocean demonstrates that true healing often requires patience, that recovery may take decades or centuries, and that the healed system may be different from what came before, while still maintaining its essential functions and beauty. There is something unmistakably joyful about the ocean in motion. Watch waves building and breaking on any beach, and you'll see what looks like pure exuberance made liquid water leaping into the air, falling back on itself, creating patterns of foam and spray that seem to express nothing but delight in the sheer pleasure of movement. The ocean's joy is visible in its restless energy, its constant motion, its seeming inability to stay still for even a moment. The exuberance of waves and currents suggests an ocean that finds happiness in its own dynamism, that takes pleasure in the complex dance between wind and water, gravity and momentum, that creates the endless variety of waveforms that make each moment at the ocean's edge unique and beautiful. There's playfulness in the way waves approach the shore at different angles, creating interference patterns that build into larger waves or cancel each other out in moments of unexpected calm. The ocean seems to celebrate storms and calms with equal enthusiasm, finding joy in both its moments of dramatic action and its periods of peaceful rest. During storms, the ocean's joy appears in its willingness to engage fully with the atmospheric forces acting upon it, building waves that reach extraordinary heights, creating surf that pounds the shore with tremendous energy, expressing what looks like delight in its own power and responsiveness. But there's also joy visible in the ocean's quiet moments, the way morning light creates pathways of silver across calm water, the gentle lapping of small waves against a peaceful shore, the quiet breathing of deep swells that roll across the open ocean like the contented sighs of some vast, dreaming being. The ocean seems equally happy in its moments of rest and its moments of action, finding joy in the full range of its emotional and physical expression. Tide pools reveal perhaps the most playful aspect of the ocean's character, creating temporary worlds where ocean and land meet in intimate, ever-changing arrangements. Each tide pool is like a small experiment in joy, a miniature ecosystem where the ocean plays with different combinations of life forms, creates temporary habitats that exist for just a few hours between tides, and demonstrates its endless creativity in finding new ways to support and celebrate life. The way surf interacts with different types of coastlines reveals the ocean's delight in variety and surprise. On sandy beaches, waves create one kind of joy, the soft, rhythmic sound of water meeting sand, the gentle retreat of foam down the beach slope, the creation of temporary patterns in the sand that will be erased and recreated with each tide cycle. On rocky shores, the ocean expresses a different kind of joy, the dramatic spray of waves hitting solid rock, the creation of temporary waterfalls as waves pour back into the sea, the musical sounds of water rushing through channels and caverns carved in stone. The ocean laughs with foam and spray, expressing what appears to be pure delight in its own exuberance. Whitecaps forming on windswept waters look like laughter bubbling up from the ocean's depths, spontaneous expressions of joy that appear and disappear in moments, creating a constantly changing pattern of celebration across the sea's surface. Bioluminescence represents perhaps the ocean's most magical expression of joy, the way it creates its own light in the darkness, turning night swimming into a shower of blue sparks, making every movement through the water generate trails of living light. It's as if the ocean has learned to paint with light, creating temporary artworks that exist for just moments before fading back into darkness. Expressions of joy so beautiful and ephemeral that they seem like the ocean's own form of poetry. But the ocean's emotional life, encompasses more than just joy and exuberance. There is also something that feels like grief in the ocean's relationship with loss, a kind of liquid sadness that becomes visible when we consider how the ocean holds the memory of what has been lost and may never return. The ocean holds the memory of extinct species in its chemistry, in the sediments that accumulate on its floor, in the empty ecological niches that still exist where vanished creatures once thrived. Every mass extinction in Earth's history has left its mark in the ocean's memory, chemical signatures and fossil records that preserve the traces of life forms that no longer exist anywhere else in the universe. There's something profoundly moving about the way the ocean preserves these memories, maintaining the chemical conditions that once supported trilobites and ammonites, keeping alive the circulation patterns that once carried ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs across ancient seas. The ocean serves as both graveyard and memorial for the countless species that have lived and died in its waters, holding their memories not just in fossil form, but in the ongoing chemical and physical processes that still reflect their ancient presence. Rising sea levels create a different kind of oceanic grief, as the ocean slowly reclaims coastlines that have been home to human communities for thousands of years. There's something that feels like regret in the way the ocean moves inland, covering archaeological sites, drowning coastal forests, forcing the retreat of communities that have lived by the sea for generations. Yet even this apparent destruction carries with it a kind of memory, as the ocean incorporates the remnants of human habitation into its own body, preserving in its sediments the traces of how people once lived along its shores. The ocean's response to pollution reveals another form of grief, as contaminated waters and damaged ecosystems reflect the ocean's struggle to process and heal from the waste products of human civilization. Oil spills, plastic pollution, chemical runoff, all of these represent wounds in the ocean's body that heal slowly and imperfectly, leaving scars in the form of altered chemistry and damaged ecosystems. Yet there's also something that feels like hope in the ocean's response to loss and damage. Even as it grieves for what has been lost, the ocean continues to create conditions for new life, new evolution, new possibilities. The same chemical processes that preserve the memory of extinct species also create the conditions where new species can evolve. The same circulation patterns that carry pollutants also carry the seeds of recovery, distributing larvae and nutrients that allow damaged ecosystems to gradually heal and diversify. The ocean serves as keeper of what we've lost and hope for what might return. In its vast memory, it holds the genetic information that could someday allow extinct species to be restored, the chemical knowledge that could help us understand how to heal damaged ecosystems, the circulation patterns that could carry recovery to the most distant and damaged parts of the marine world. Chemical traces of environmental losses are preserved in the ocean's water and sediments like a detailed record of grief, allowing scientists to read the history of damage and recovery, to understand how the ocean has responded to past crises and how it might respond to future challenges. These chemical memories serve as both warning and guidance, showing us the consequences of environmental damage while also revealing the ocean's remarkable capacity for healing and renewal. The ocean's grief is patient and profound, expressed not in dramatic outbursts but in the slow, steady work of preservation and healing that continues across geological timescales. It mourns what has been lost while simultaneously preparing the conditions for what might emerge, holding space for both memory and possibility in its vast, embracing waters. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you might sense something of the ocean's complex emotional life flowing through your own body, the joy and exuberance that keeps your heart beating, the rhythms and cycles that regulate your breathing, the capacity for healing that allows you to recover from stress and trauma, and perhaps even a touch of the ocean's patient grief for all that has been lost, and its quiet hope for all that might yet be born. You are, after all, made largely of water, and water remembers everything, including how to feel. What if the ocean has been trying to tell us something all along? What if, for millions of years, it has been writing messages in a language we're only now beginning to learn to read, messages preserved in ice and stone, in the chemistry of ancient waters, in the fossilized remains of creatures that lived and died when the world was young? What if every time we study an ice core or examine ocean sediments, we're actually reading letters that the ocean wrote to the future, messages it hoped someone, someday, would have the wisdom to understand? As you settle into the gentle embrace of approaching sleep, Imagine yourself as an archaeologist of time, carefully brushing away the dust of ages to reveal messages written not in clay tablets or carved in stone, but dissolved in water and frozen in ice, preserved in the patient accumulation of marine snow settling onto the deep ocean floor. These are messages written in the ocean's own hand, in its own language of chemistry and circulation, temperature and salinity, messages that have waited millions of years for readers who could understand their meaning. Ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica are the ocean's messengers, preserving samples of ancient atmosphere and precipitation. Layer by layer, they reveal how surface temperatures, circulation, and ocean atmosphere chemistry shaped Earth's climate. Trapped air bubbles show how much carbon dioxide the ocean once absorbed or released, revealing its role in global climate rhythms. Sediments on the seafloor are like diary entries. They preserve fossilized plankton, volcanic ash, and chemical clues that tell us how marine life lived, what it ate, and how it responded to environmental shifts. These messages reveal entire ocean systems that were once warm from top to bottom, or cold and icebound, showing that Earth's oceans have reorganized many times before. Yet the ocean doesn't just preserve the past, it also hints at the future. Climate models are essentially translations of the ocean's own forecasting system. Circulation patterns, heat distribution, and the movement of species are all part of the ocean's predictive memory. It signals future changes sometimes decades in advance through shifting currents, chemistry, and life patterns. The ocean facilitates communication not only through time, but also across species. Chemical signals, sound waves, and pressure patterns allow creatures as different as krill and whales to exchange critical information. Coral reefs coordinate reproduction through shared cues in temperature and moonlight. Whale songs echo across entire basins, possibly guiding others in ways we're only beginning to understand. These vast communication networks form a kind of collective intelligence, one that helps entire ecosystems adapt and respond together. Most profoundly, we are now writing our own messages into the ocean's record. Our carbon emissions alter its chemistry. Our plastic waste becomes fossil evidence. Our fisheries and conservation efforts reshape ecosystems. The ocean records it all, impartially. The choices we make today will echo through its memory for thousands of years. Still, the ocean's resilience remains astonishing. Even amid disruption, it continues to support life, regulate climate, and offer pathways for recovery. Restoration efforts and marine protections become hopeful entries in this evolving story. Tonight, as you rest, remember this. You are part of an ancient conversation. Your breath, your choices, your care, all contribute to the message we leave in the ocean's diary. The story isn't over. There's still time to add a chapter of wisdom, connection, and hope. If the ocean sleeps, what might it dream? As you settle into your own approaching slumber, feeling the gentle pull of consciousness beginning to ebb like a retreating tide, imagine for a moment that the vast body of water covering most of our planet has its own version of sleep, its own nocturnal processing of the day's experiences, its own mysterious realm of oceanic dreams. Perhaps the ocean's dreams take place in its deepest waters, in those profound depths where sunlight has never touched, where the pressure is so immense that it creates its own form of consciousness, its own strange logic. Here, in the quiet depths that might serve as the ocean's unconscious mind, ancient currents move with the slow, steady rhythm of deep sleep, carrying dreams across ocean basins at the pace of centuries rather than hours. These deep currents might be like the ocean's REM sleep, the mysterious phase where the most vivid dreams occur. Just as our own REM sleep is characterized by rapid eye movements and intense neural activity, the ocean's deepest currents are sites of intense chemical activity where nutrients are processed and redistributed, where the ocean sorts through the chemical memories of the day's photosynthesis, the night's respiration, the endless cycle of life and death occurring in the waters above. What would water dream about? Perhaps it dreams of ancient shores that existed millions of years ago, when the continents were arranged differently and the ocean's boundaries were drawn in places that now lie deep beneath the land. Perhaps it dreams of future tides that will wash over coastlines not yet imagined, carrying the chemical signatures of life forms that have not yet evolved, responding to the pull of moons that have not yet formed. In the ocean's dreams, time might flow differently, the way it does in our own nocturnal visions. Past and future might merge in currents that carry Triassic seawater alongside tomorrow's rain, where the songs of long-extinct marine reptiles harmonize with the calls of whales not yet born. The ocean's dreams might be a place where all of its experiences across geological time exist simultaneously, where every drop of water remembers every shore it has ever touched. Just as we process our daily experiences through dreams, the ocean might use its quiet, nocturnal hours to integrate the complex experiences of each day's interaction with sun, wind, rain, and the countless life forms that depend on its waters. When darkness falls across the ocean's surface, a different kind of processing begins, a nocturnal reorganization of the day's chemical and biological experiences. The night shift in marine ecosystems might be part of the ocean's dream processing. As daylight fades, many marine creatures begin their daily vertical migration, one of the largest movements of biomass on the planet. Tiny zooplankton rise from the depths to feed on phytoplankton near the surface, while larger predators follow them upward in a vast, coordinated dance that redistributes nutrients and energy throughout the water column. This massive nightly reorganization might be how the ocean sorts through its memories, moving chemical information between different depths, integrating the day's photosynthetic production with the deep water's stored nutrients, creating new combinations and patterns that wouldn't be possible during the more static daylight hours. Like a dreaming mind making unexpected connections between disparate memories, the ocean's night circulation might generate new solutions to biological and chemical challenges. Chemical changes during different phases of the ocean's daily cycle mirror the biochemical changes that occur during human sleep cycles. During the day, surface waters are rich with oxygen from photosynthesis, charged with the energy of solar input. At night, these same waters begin to release stored energy, processing the chemical products of the day's biological activity, breaking down and rebuilding molecular structures in ways that prepare for the next day's cycle. The ocean sorting through its memories, like we do in dreams, offers a gentle metaphor for how complex systems maintain balance. Just as dreams help us process emotions and memories, the ocean's nightly chemical and biological cycles may help it adapt and stabilize, restoring the delicate conditions needed for life. Perhaps its downtime gives rise to new patterns and solutions. In deep, quiet waters where temperature, pressure, and chemical gradients shift beyond surface norms, the ocean might engage in its most creative thinking. Evolutionary innovations may emerge from these depths, strange, bioluminescent creatures and alien forms, experiments in life that could only evolve far from sunlight and surface rules. The ocean dreams through bioluminescence, coral, and whale song, an ancient intelligence flowing in rhythms we're only beginning to understand. Because we are water, we dream too. Each breath, each wave, echoes a shared memory. Sleep well, fellow. Drop your dreams a part of the sea's vast living mind.